This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Welcome to This Feels Familiar. I'm your host, Minaa B. I'm an author, therapist, and creator of The Siblinghood Theory. And this show explores the themes of belonging, conflict, and the relational patterns shaping your life. So let's dive in. Something that I have noticed throughout my life, but especially since I became a therapist, is that a lot of people use the words nice and kind interchangeably. Someone does something thoughtful and we say that was nice of them. Or if someone is very patient or very generous, we'll refer to them as a very kind person. But nice and kind are actually quite different. And the confusion between them shapes how so many of us move through our relationships. I believe that there are a lot of people who tell themselves that they're being nice when someone mistreats them or disrespects them or makes them uncomfortable. And the hard truth is that sometimes you're not being nice, you are actually allowing people to mistreat you. You're showing people that you have a high tolerance for being disrespected. It's not nice to let people feel comfortable treating you in a manner that you don't want to be treated. And that is what we're going to talk about in today's episode. So before we dive in, please make sure you subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any future episodes. So let me be clear about what I'm talking about here. And I'm going to break down the differences between nice and kindness. Being nice is about maintaining an image. It's about being pleasant, agreeable, easy to get along with. And often people who are saying they're being nice, what I notice is that they may say yes to things when they want to say no. They believe that being nice means keeping the peace at their own expense, or being nice means avoiding conflict at all costs. Often niceness prioritizes other people's comfort over your own well-being. But here's where kindness comes in. I truly believe kindness is about genuine care. Kind means actually considering someone's well-being, including the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. People who are kind set boundaries because boundaries protect all parties involved. People who are kind tell the truth instead of telling someone what they want to hear. And most importantly, people who are kind stand up for themselves because respecting themselves is part of respecting others, but also they know how they want to be treated and they have a low bandwidth and a low tolerance for people feeling comfortable to treat them in a way that they don't want to be treated. I'm going to give you a concrete example. Let's say you go out to dinner and there's a person in your life who every time you plan a dinner date with them or whatever kind of date, they always show up late. They're consistently tardy and you're always frustrated, waiting, and you feel like your time is being disrespected. Responding to this person in a nice way might look like not saying anything at all, smiling when they arrive, acting like everything is fine, and continuing to plan dates while sometimes secretly having resentment toward the person, maybe gossiping about them behind their back because you don't feel comfortable enough to address them. Or sometimes you just find yourself kind of continuing to be in this loop with that person because you think it's the nice way to handle it, right? You perceive it as I am being kind, I am being pleasant, I am being agreeable. Let me tell you what a kind person would do. Someone who practices kindness will say to their friend or their cousin or their sibling, hey, you constantly show up late whenever we're doing things, and I do feel like my time doesn't matter to you. It does bother me that you are chronically late, and if it continues to happen, I'm going to have to decline hanging out with you in the future. That is being direct. That is being honest. You are expressing to the person how their behavior is leaving an impact and you're giving them an opportunity to do better. You're saying to the person, if you continue to do this thing, this is what my boundary is going to be. You're not saying, I'm never going to hang out with you again, but the kind person is saying, I'm going to give you an additional chance to do better while also honoring my truth and being emotionally expressive enough to tell you what I'm feeling and how your behavior is impacting me. So, do you see the difference, or at least hear the difference between how a kind person will respond to disrespect or just some form of treatment they don't like compared to a nice person? So, why do we confuse them? I always tell people I truly believe a lack of boundaries is a societal issue. I don't think it's just something that is isolated to how we're raised in our home environments. I do think it's an issue in American culture, to be very specific here. And I think we do need to dissect why this is a thing. Why do so many people choose niceness over kindness? Why do we prioritize being agreeable or over being honest? And a lot of it is cultural. We're taught that being nice is good, that good people are nice people, and that if you're not nice, well, what's the opposite? You're mean. That niceness equals goodness, because we love to have a binary view, unfortunately, in society. So if you're not being nice, you're automatically a mean person. There's never any in between, because sometimes we struggle with nuance as a culture. And I find that in my line of work, especially as a woman who moves through society, I believe women get this message a lot, that women are supposed to be nice and pleasant and easy to be around. Women should not ruffle feathers. Women should not be difficult. They should not say no too much, or they'll be seen as selfish or something else that's very degrading. And I do find that that plays a role in why, again, when we're talking about culture, we have to add in gender here, because there are different experiences attached to the intersections of our identities. And so, if you're a woman listening to this, I want you to think about how you've been conditioned to be seen as nice versus kind. And it's important because there's a real fear underneath all of this. There's a fear of being seen as mean. If you are working in a particular environment, for example, if you're the only woman on a team and everyone else is a man, when you add in race and culture and all of these different things, we do know that sometimes we can be treated a certain way or penalized if we are perceived as rude or mean. And I think what's really hard about this is niceness is subjective to a lot of people. I could be as kind as possible, and there's going to be someone out there who still feels like I'm being rude. Or I can also be nice and tell myself this is the nice thing to do. And I really want you to think about it. Think about all the times you thought you were being nice and the other person still had an issue with what you were doing. So sometimes you really can't win. And I think this is why you have to understand at the core of what's happening, this is my truth. This is how I'm showing up, but I can't force other people to perceive life the way I do. And the fears that we have, however, because we know we can't control how people perceive life, is a very valid thing. And we have to work through that fear, the fear of being seen as mean, the fear of conflict, fear that if you stand up for yourself, people will leave, or that you will even lose relationships or job opportunities. So often, what do people do? They choose niceness, and niceness makes them feel small. They accommodate, and the accommodation makes their needs feel as if they're being neglected. And sometimes you might even smile and pretend to be experiencing some form of joy when you're not. And what ends up happening in the end? You build resentment. You feel used. You feel invisible. And over time, the relationship either dies a slow death or it blows up because you finally can't hold it in anymore. So it's important for us to recognize that boundaries are an act of kindness. And I think this is a piece people struggle with the most. They think boundaries are mean. They think boundaries are selfish. They think having boundaries makes them a bad person. And I realize this is an issue because every time people ask me, what can I do to change this particular circumstance? I will always say to them, it sounds like you need to implement some boundaries here. And that's so hard for people because they're so ingrained that boundaries are cruel and the best response or approach is to be a nice person. But you have to ask yourself, what has niceness gotten you? Seriously, what has niceness gotten you? Now, when you are kind, however, like I said earlier, it allows all parties to benefit. Even if the other people don't see the benefit, the reality is there are going to be times where you have to say no. There are going to be times where you can't do certain things. And so boundaries are actually one of the kindest things you can do in your relationships because boundaries teach people how to treat you. When you say no and stick to it, you're teaching someone, this is what I will tolerate and this is what I won't. And I think the beauty in that is that you're giving the other person information on what it's like to be in relationship with you. That information allows them to know intricate details about you and what you like and what you don't like. That is what allows for intimacy in a relationship. And I think our mindset creates some of this fear because we're thinking that the boundary is going to be the wedge and the wall and the barrier to intimacy when the reality is the boundary is the thing that will help people understand what it means to build a very authentic, genuine relationship with you. Boundaries create safety. If someone knows what you're willing to accept and what you're not, they know how to be around you and accommodate you because there's predictability and there's also a sense of security because they know you. They know intricate details about you, and it can allow for them to feel more secure being in relationship with you versus walking on eggshells to figure out, is this going to make this person mad? Is this going to make this person anxious? Would they like this? Would they not like this? Now they know, they have the information. So remember that information also creates safety. Boundaries also prevent resentment. When you speak up early, when you say something isn't working for you, you prevent the buildup of anger that eventually explodes. You're actually protecting the relationship by addressing small issues before they become big ones. And that's important. I want you to take a moment to think about all the times you let things just slide. You pretended it didn't happen. You turned a blind eye to it. You swept it under the rug because you wanted the problem to figure it itself out, or you wanted the other person to figure it out instead of just speaking up. Kindness is when you tell someone what they did and you give them an opportunity to do better. That is one of the kindest things we can do when we are in relationships.
Running a small business means I wear lots of hats. When I put on my hiring hat, I can count on LinkedIn Hiring Pro to make it easy. LinkedIn Hiring Pro helps manage my hiring workflow, puts my job post in front of a unique network of professionals, and matches me with the best candidates for my business. I can also share my job with my network. No other job site lets me do that. No wonder most small businesses say they'd use LinkedIn Hiring Pro again. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free on LinkedIn today at linkedin.com/quality.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Unlock over $4,000 in business and travel value annually with statement credits on select purchases from brands like Dell, ChatGPT Business, Hilton, and Adobe, and other benefits. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Based on total potential value of statement credits on select purchases and other benefits, enrollments required, monthly and other limits and terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Boundaries are also honest. Pretending something is okay when it is not a form of kindness. It is deception. You are being deceitful. And I have to say it this way so that it really sticks, because sometimes we think we are being noble and just, and the reality is you are being a liar. You are being deceptive. And when you are not honest, again, it impacts your ability to create these emotionally safe havens, these emotionally safe relationships where intimacy can be formed because honesty is present. And so understand that when we pretend, it's setting someone up to keep doing something that hurts you. And this is why testing people or doing the whole, I'm just not going to say anything because they should know better. If they're doing it, they clearly don't. Because I think we also need to understand that a lot of times people are doing things that someone else probably allowed them to do. So they may have normalized this behavior is acceptable because there are so many other people in their life who are being nice and not being truthful. And here you are doing the same thing and having this expectation that they're supposed to know better. So now you're withdrawing and avoiding and you're staying silent when the kind thing to do is to just tell the person the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Also, boundaries show respect. They show you respect yourself enough to protect yourself. And when you respect yourself, other people learn to respect you too. So when someone tells you that your boundaries are mean or selfish, what they're actually saying is, I don't like the limits you've set on my behavior. And you know what? That is their issue, not yours. Because let me be real with you. A lot of people are looking for folks to accommodate their poor behavior. Some people are not trying to change. What their expectation is that you are just going to tolerate what it is that they want to do and how they want to treat you. You setting a limit lets them know, I am not to be played with. I'm going to just say it straight up. I am not to be played with. This is something I just won't tolerate. And if you want someone to accommodate you, it's not going to be me, and it doesn't have to be me. And if they struggle with that, that is their work to do. So I want to bring some research into this because I don't think a lot of us realize the detrimental impact a lack of boundaries has on our mental health and also the desire to be nice all the time. Because people who don't have boundaries, people who choose niceness over kindness, have significantly higher rates of burnout. They're overextended. They're doing emotional labor for everyone around them. They're saying yes to things they can't actually do, and their nervous systems are in a constant state of stress. There's also research showing that people who struggle with assertiveness, who have a hard time standing up for themselves, have higher rates of anxiety and depression. Their mental health suffers because they're constantly accommodating others at their own expense. And here's the thing about being conflict avoidant. Avoiding conflict doesn't create peace. It creates distance. It creates misunderstanding. It creates resentment. People who avoid conflict often end up with worse relationship outcomes than people who address issues head on. In contrast, people who have healthy boundaries and can assertively communicate their needs report higher relationship satisfaction, better mental health, and lower stress levels because they feel more secure. They feel more respected, and paradoxically, their relationships are actually stronger. So what can you start doing today to learn how to move from being nice into being kind? And how do you learn to defend yourself and your boundaries without guilt? First, I think it's important to understand that setting boundaries requires self-regulation because you are teaching yourself a practice that is unfamiliar. And when we're introducing unfamiliar behaviors to our nervous system, it can take some time for our bodies to adjust to the discomfort around that. When you set a boundary, someone might get upset, they might push back, they might try to convince you that you're being unreasonable. And in that moment, you're going to feel uncomfortable because you're doing something new. And that discomfort can bring up feelings of guilt or anxiety or the pressure to abandon your boundaries. But self-regulation means staying regulated in the face of that discomfort. It means that your body can stay within its window of tolerance where you can think clearly and manage your feelings versus going in a state of hyperarousal, which is when the body goes into fight or flight, or hypoarousal, which is when the body shuts down and you might freeze or withdraw. So it basically means not caving in because someone else is uncomfortable. It's literally teaching your body that you can tolerate tension and still be firm in the midst of setting your boundaries. So I do believe that we should practice these self-regulation practices every day. And the first one is grounding techniques. Before setting a boundary, do something like placing your feet on the ground and taking 3 deep breaths. This is a way to really learn how to be rooted and to learn how to be grounded. Sometimes, if you're not home sitting somewhere, you can literally just do box breathing. There are so many different breathing practices that you can do, whether you're home or out and about, or even while you're with your family. So, those are some things that you can be thinking about: meditations and different practices around your breath. Another thing I encourage you to really, really try to do is pause before responding. If someone pushes back on your boundary, don't respond immediately. Truly, truly, truly try to take a breath. You don't have to justify or defend in the moment. All you have to do is pause, take a breath, and give yourself clarity around how you want to respond. We can also self-regulate through physical activities. This could look like going to the gym, weightlifting, or doing moderate exercises like walking, stretching, shaking your hands, just literally moving your body to help your nervous system settle, and that can help you stay calm. My other practice that I think is one of my favorites is to literally remember why the boundary matters. What are you protecting? It is the number one thing I talk to my clients about when they struggle with setting boundaries. I always say, why do you have to set this boundary in the first place? Let's redirect blame here and focus on the greater issue at hand. Why are you erecting this boundary? Because you didn't erect this boundary out of nowhere. The boundary is here for a reason. So let's focus on the reason, and let's focus less on what our body is feeling and focus on the data that we have in front of us. This is happening, and so therefore I need to protect myself by doing X. And that is the boundary. Now, here's something else that I want you to practice, and these are more concrete practices for defending yourself. The first thing is stop apologizing for having needs. Please stop. You need things. That's not selfish. It is human. You need to be respected in your relationships. Sometimes you're going to need to reclaim your time. Sometimes you're going to need care. These aren't unreasonable asks. Instead of apologizing before stating your need, just say what you want to say directly. So instead of saying, I'm sorry that this day doesn't work for me, just say, hey, this day doesn't work for me. I'm available on this day. Can we hang out that day? Can we do this that day? You don't have to apologize for having needs, and you don't need to soften the landing. You need to stand on business. You need to stand firm in whatever it is that you are trying to communicate, because that is what it looks like to be assertive. The second thing is learn to say no without over explaining. I think this is an issue a lot of people have, where there are times where we don't know how to say, no, this doesn't work for me. And we feel inclined to give people a whole dissertation for why. Now, I am going to preface this and say, when it comes to saying no without explaining, I'm going to add an additional touch here, because I do think there are people in our lives who are worthy of an explanation, like your partner or your best friend or a close family member. But I also think there are some people in our lives that you probably don't really have to explain much to them. You can just be very direct and say, that doesn't work for me. No, I can't do that. No, thank you. I'm not interested. Where, if your best friend of 15 years says, hey, are you making it to my wedding? Saying no with a period can come off a little curt. But if you respond and say, hey, thank you so much for the invite. Unfortunately, I cannot make it. My parent is sick and I'm flying out to a different state. And so since the dates coincide, I'm not going to be able to be there. This person is your best friend. So they're having information and data to understand why you're showing up the way that you show up. So I think I need to do another episode on this, because I think a lack of discernment in our relationships and who is important to us and understanding the different circles of support in our lives plays a role in why some people either over-explain or just don't explain at all. And that's causing some tension in their relationships. But for the sake of today, what I just want you to understand is that you can say no without feeling inclined to provide a reason all the time or over explaining, because the number one thing I want you to think about is, why are you over explaining? Most of the time, it's because we are looking for justification. The only person who can justify your boundary is you. You can tell someone no, and let me be honest, depending on who you're talking to, if they are manipulative, if they are self-centered, those people are going to find a way to get you to change your mind. So if you're looking for them to give you some sort of grace and understanding, you have to ask yourself, when has this person ever shown me grace or understanding? You have to be the one to be firm enough to say, listen, this is what the response is, whether you like it or not. And of course, you don't necessarily say that to the person, but it's a thought process when you are asserting yourself. So remember that. The next thing that you want to do is learn to name disrespect or just name things that you don't like in the moment. So when someone does something disrespectful or just something that you really don't like, don't let it slide. Just say it. A theme that came up for me recently was thinking about a time where I was supposed to hang out with a friend and we confirmed all our plans. And next thing I know, my friend texted me and said, this and this, these two people are coming. And they didn't ask me if it was okay for them to come. They just made the plan. And so I decided to move forward with the plan. But the day of, I did let that friend know, hey, listen, in the future, this is how I'd like for things to be done. I was looking forward to spending time with just you. You did not ask me if they could come. And because I knew this was my only opportunity to hang out with you, I'm still here. But I do want you to know in the future, I would prefer that you ask me if other people can come. And also know that if my intention is for us to hang out, I'm most likely going to decline. It doesn't mean that you have to attack the person, but you can just name what's happening. And when you are in friendships with people who do want to have deep intimacy with you, again, as I said earlier, they're learning how to be in relationship with you. Oh, okay, now I know Mina doesn't like it when we make plans and I decide to just bring other people into our plans without asking her first, because I don't know if this is something that she would like, but now I do know. The next thing is kind of hard for some people, but I want you to learn how to stay calm but firm because your tone matters. If you're aggressive or angry, people focus on your tone instead of your boundary. If you're too soft, they think you're negotiating. So calm and firm looks like having a very steady voice, not being loud, not being too shaky with your words, being very clear and direct. And this is why I say over explaining, in my opinion, makes people ramble. And now I kind of lost what the point of this conversation was because you told me too many things. What is your response, right? Think about when someone is having an event, the RSVP option is yes or no. It is not yes, no, other. Give yourself an opportunity now to explain why you're choosing which response. No, I want you to kind of approach many situations with that lens of the options are yes or no. Which one am I supposed to pick? Versus I'm about to write a whole dissertation or 15 text messages to share something when the easiest response right now would be to just say, no, I can't do that. Being calm and firm also looks like not apologizing for your boundary. And it also looks like not over explaining, as I said. So here's one more thing I want you to remember. In order for you to have boundaries, you have to try to set them because all of this sounds good in theory. But boundaries aren't something you just decide to have. They're something you practice. You have to actually try them out, even if it's imperfectly or even if it comes out messily. Your first time saying no might actually be awkward. You might explain too much and you might soften it and you might feel terrible or guilty after. That is normal, but you're practicing. And each time you set a boundary, you get better at it. Your nervous system learns that discomfort isn't dangerous. The other person doesn't actually leave just because you said no. And if they do, it highlights the nature of that relationship and it gives you data to understand how to maneuver in that relationship. So expect it to be uncomfortable at first. Expect to mess it up, but keep trying because boundaries, like any skill, once you develop it through practice, you get better at it. So here's the thing I want you to remember. Being kind sometimes means not being nice. It means telling someone no. It means defending yourself. It means setting boundaries and holding them even when someone else doesn't like it. The confusion between nice and kind has cost people so much. They've spent years being pleasant while feeling invisible. They've accommodated so much that they've lost themselves along the way. They've prioritized everyone else's comfort while their own well-being suffered. And if that is you, you can change that. You can choose kindness over niceness. You can defend yourself and set boundaries and stand firm in them. And you can tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. And when you do, I'm telling you, something is going to shift. people start to respect you more, you start to build confidence, your relationships get healthier, your mental health improves, and you stop carrying resentment. Being kind to yourself sometimes means being not nice to others. And that's not only okay, sometimes it is necessary for the sake of our mental health and well-being. So if this episode resonated with you, please rate and subscribe to this show so that you do not miss future episodes. I also ask that you subscribe to my newsletter, All the Hard Things, on Substack, and you can also grab a copy of my book, Owning Our Struggles, wherever books are sold, and all of the links are down in the description notes. Before I go, here's what I want you to remember today. Boundaries are kind. Standing up for yourself is kind. Saying no is kind. Being nice and being kind are not the same thing. So for today, I want you to be intentional when it comes to choosing kindness. Your well-being depends on it. Until next time.
Want a $1,000 weight loss medication for $50? It all starts with Roe's free GLP-1 insurance check. Just upload your insurance card to see if you have coverage, then relax. Over 200,000 people have qualified for a $50 copay through Roe. Go to roe.co/health. Half of covered patients have a $50 per month copay or less for medication, plus $145 monthly Roe membership fee. Deductible cost may apply and final cost varies by insurance plan. For safety information about GLP-1 medications, including boxed warning, go to roe.co/safety, RX only.